Welcome to Professor Wright. You have a voice. Let's find it. And welcome back to Professor Wright. I am the Professor, D.A. Adams, and this is video number 5. Now, when we left off in video 4, we left off with the 5 questions to ask for audience analysis. If you have not watched that video yet, you need to go back and watch that because it's really important. After you finish the 5 questions and you have a good idea who your audience is, that's going to help you to shape the message that you're going to convey. That's going to help you to focus on everything that comes after, because if you know who your audience is and you understand how to direct the message towards them, then as you go through each of the next few steps, you're going to have a much clearer idea of what to put down. But after you finish audience analysis, you still really don't have anything. You're still going to be sitting there staring at a blank piece of paper or a blank computer screen if that's what you're using. And there's nothing that's more intimidating to a writer than to sit and stare at a blank piece of paper. My first book came in at about 60,000 words, somewhere in that neighborhood. I think about 64,000 total. If I had started with a blank piece of paper, I would still be sitting there staring at it because I don't know 60,000 words. And the thought of sitting and trying to come up with that much material is really intimidating. Nobody likes to start staring at that blank piece of paper or that flashing cursor on the computer screen. That makes you freeze up and not be able to come up with thoughts. It's much better to start with something else, and that's why we start with idea gathering. Once you've done your audience analysis, your next step is to start coming up with ideas. In this video, I'm going to give you several techniques of how to come up with ideas. Some different things that you can try that hopefully will help you and serve as a springboard to get you into the writing that you want to do. So let's start with the first one. The first thing is very simple, just plain old brainstorming. Start with a blank piece of paper, or again, you can do this on a computer, that's perfectly okay. But you start with the blank sheet, and then you're going to jot down an idea that comes to you. And maybe you take a break for a few minutes, or you keep going, but you come up with more ideas. And you keep thinking about it, and you keep mulling stuff over in your head, and you write down whatever else comes to your mind. And after a little while, you've got quite a bit of stuff written down. And then eventually you start taking a highlighter or some kind of marker or something and drawing connections between the stuff that you're coming up with, because you start to see how it connects together, or you start to see relationships between the ideas that you've thought up. But you do this brainstorming, and it gives you a jumping off point, because now instead of having that blank piece of paper, you have ideas written down. Now if you notice, my brainstorming it's a little messy. I've got ideas written everywhere, upside down, sideways, backwards, because I'm a very creative person and I have a very creative mind, and usually creative minds are fairly chaotic. So for me, when I sit down and do brainstorming, I'm probably the only person who's going to be able to read it. But that's okay, because I'm the only person who has to be able to read it. We'll worry about the polishing and all of that stuff much later. Right now, I'm just getting some ideas down. But I know there are a lot of you out there who, you couldn't do it this way. You couldn't have sloppy looking brainstorming. You need to have stuff neat and orderly. And for you, if your brainstorming looks like this, that's perfectly fine. There's no difference between the two other than just how they're presented. If you're a very neat, in between the lines kind of person, then that's how your brainstorming should look. Don't think that just because I do it one way that you have to do it that way as well. Do what works for you when it comes to brainstorming. Just get some ideas down. Now, one of the big keys to brainstorming is do not censor yourself. Everything that you come up with, whatever pops into your head, write it down. If you're writing a paper for school and it's supposed to be on shoes and you come up with an idea about giraffes, jot that idea about giraffes down, because you never know when that idea is going to come back and serve you with something that does work and something that is effective. You never know what the triggering event is going to be that leads you to the thought that you need. So if something pops into your head, just go ahead and jot it down. Well, even if it seems completely ridiculous and irrelevant, it still could prove to be useful. After you've done brainstorming, your next step that I think you should try is, depending on the project that you're working on and what you're doing, is you should do your research. Now, as far as research goes, I'm going to do several videos on research itself much later, and we're going to get into a lot of nuts and bolts about it. So I don't really want to spend much time on it here because I want to get to the other idea gathering exercises. just know that the reason why I want you to do brainstorming before you go do research is because if you jot down what you think you know about a particular topic, that's going to help you in doing your research, because it's going to give you a starting point. It's going to give you a frame of reference. If you just go and try to research something on your own, you may end up getting overwhelmed by the sheer volume of information that's out there. But if you've jotted down several things that you think you know about that topic and you can search specifically for those things, now you've narrowed it down and you've got a much better chance of finding information. And you're also probably going to find out that you didn't really know as much as you thought you did. But enough on that. We'll talk more about research later. The next form of idea gathering that I want you to consider is what's called clustering. Now, a lot of times you'll hear this called other things. Sometimes it's called treeing, sometimes branching, bubbling. There are all kinds of words for it. I call it clustering because that's what makes sense to me. Call it whatever you want to. Clustering is very simple, and it's very effective for those of you who tend to be much more visually oriented. Most of you are visual learners. If you're one of those people who knows you're a visual learner, I strongly recommend that you try clustering, because this may be the most effective form of idea gathering for you. With clustering, what you do is you start with your main idea. You write out whatever that main idea is, you draw a circle around it. And then from there, you're going to cluster off of it. Now let's say for this example, I came up with 3 new points that I could make off of this main idea. Don't lock yourself into a number. You may come up with 2, you may come up with 1,000. It depends on whatever the project is and the size and scope of it. For this particular example though, let's just say we have 3 main points that we came up with. From there, from those sub-points that you come up with off of the main idea, now you can keep going and come up with even more material. And again, just like with the brainstorming, you can start to see relationships between this and that and start to see connections between ideas. This can be really helpful for you in coming up with the ideas that you want to say as you continue to write. So try clustering out. It's a much simpler and more streamlined version of brainstorming that gives you a visual frame of reference for the points that you want to make. And again, for you visual learners, that can be very important. Now, the next form of idea gathering that I want you to try is what's called free writing. With free writing, very simply, you sit down with a blank sheet of paper, a blank computer screen, and you just start writing. Now, this is not beginning whatever it is you're supposed to be writing. This is not, if you're writing a book, sitting down and starting chapter 1. That's not what this is. This is just sitting down and doing a form of brainstorming that is in paragraph form. And whatever pops into your head, write it down. Everything. And let your brain just go. It's probably going to jump around, and you're probably going to start writing random stuff that seems like it has nothing to do with the topic. That's okay. Go ahead and write it down, because that stuff can prove useful later on. But do not consider this your rough draft of the document that you're going to be creating. This thing should not have any relationship to the rough draft of what you're going to be creating. This should just be some random ideas that you come up with that'll help you get started. But some people think better if they write stuff out in full paragraphs rather than just short, choppy little notes like I do, or in clusters like visual learners do. Free writing is a very effective tool for the people who need to think in terms of paragraphs. The last exercise for idea gathering that I want to give you is what is called double entry notes. But to do double entry notes, we really need to go through and do a whole video on that. So that's going to be video number 6. We're going to come back and I'm going to show you how to sit down and do double entry notes. And it's probably the most handy tool that I can give you for coming up with ideas, because you can use it for just about anything. And you can use it for things that have nothing to do with writing. And I'll try to give you a little glimpse into how to do that. But I'm going to mostly focus on how to use it for writing. And double entry notes are, again, one of the handiest tools that I have and one of the best things that I can teach you. Okay, so that's it for video number 5, where we've covered brainstorming, research, clustering, and free writing. Didn't really get into research too much, but we will later, I promise. Next video, when we pick up with number 6, we're going to jump into double entry notes, and I'll go through that. So please join us next time. For now, I am D.A. Adams, the professor, and I'll see you on the next video.